Welcome everybody to episode 21 of Healing Vibrations. And this is the broadcast where we aim to change perspective of illness, to see it as a gift. And today I'm very excited to be joined by Ben Jennings, who is a musician and also a recently qualified sound therapist. So we'll want to be hearing more about that. But also the reason that I've invited Ben on the show is that he's actually recovering or healed from, I don't know, we'll find out what Ben thinks about it, colitis and also chronic pain, and is now living symptom free and not having to take a myriad of medications, which is always lovely to hear. So thank you so much, Ben, for joining me, and welcome. And if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your journey and what happened with your illnesses when they appeared and what they were like, and then how you came out the other end, if you like.
Sure, yeah. Thanks a lot for having me on your podcast. It's quite an honor. And it's fun to get to share stories. You know, I always valued hearing other people's stories a lot when I was going through anything, particularly the difficult stuff, because that tends to be when you want to identify with others that have been through it too. So it's nice to get an opportunity to share something that I've been through also, and maybe, I don't know, I'm certainly not an expert. I don't want anyone thinking I'm any kind of medical man or scientist or anything. Yeah. All I have is my own experiences, my personal research, and if you like, kind of experimenting with life, but with different possibilities of treatment and ways of living. So that's what I have to share, and hopefully there'll be something of value in there. So I think I'll just try and be reasonably chronological. I think now I probably had symptoms of IBS for most of my teens, I think, and then when I was probably about 22 or 23, I started developing symptoms of colitis. And I think when it first started coming, I would have been probably in denial. So just kind of avoided it and didn't really speak about it.
So for people who don't know what colitis is, what sort of symptoms were you experiencing?
Yeah, so colitis is an autoimmune condition, and it's comes under the bracket of inflammatory bowel disease. So it's inflammation of the intestines. As it progresses to the whole intestines, it tends to be called Crohn's. I think that's the categorical difference in definition between colitis and Crohn's, but I wouldn't quote me on that. The symptoms are really unpleasant. It's like shitting mucus and blood, if you want to know the dirty details.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of people experience a lot of pain and fatigue as well. Now, I was lucky that I didn't have much pain and fatigue. Very fortunate, actually. And it's often a bit of a mystery as to why some people do and some people don't. And the condition in general feels quite like not enough is really known about it. It's fairly mysterious still. There's not really a clear explanation from where it comes from and why it affects certain people and not others. There's plenty of studies available about it, but there's nothing that conclusive. And I did a lot of research about this at the time. Yeah, when I finally went to the doctors, when I was probably 23 or 24 by the time I finally went to the doctors. Now, there's one issue of the fear of the symptoms and the condition.
Well, I was going to say, because that must have been, quite scary to be going to the toilet and noticing.
Yes, very scary indeed. You stare into the toilet and it's like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? What on earth is going on? Really, really scary. And yeah, and we have, my mother had cancer when she was very young, and she's always been very adamant that we are all very cancer aware, and worst case scenario, colitis and Crohn's develop into bowel cancer. So there was that as a concern as well. You know, what if this gets worse? What if it develops into cancer? So a lot of fear loaded around the issue, which, you know, doesn't help.
Definitely not. Yeah.
But one thing fear is good for is potentially, hopefully, propelling you into action. Something about it to try and get back into a state of empowerment. Now, when I did go to the doctors eventually and gave them a sample, and it was an unpleasant looking little guy, then yeah, they told me that it had high levels of this or that and so on, and this means colitis, and here's how the program of medication works. And it was really unpleasant. It was they said you take this medication for a year, and then the following year you often have to increase the dosage. Then eventually it tends to move into steroids, and then increased dosage of steroids. And it's not at all uncommon to have surgery to remove parts of the intestines that are particularly inflamed. In fact, some people, that the girl that we met together, when we first met, she had surgery very, very early, within about 6 months of a diagnosis, which to me was quite surprising because I thought it tended to come around 5 years down the line. But so anyway, so they laid that in front of me, and I was like, am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Yeah.
I was like, fuck that. I am not doing that. That's bullshit. Like, how can that's not an answer. That is not a solution. It just sounded so bad. So, and I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, like it's like, it feels like your life could be over. But I couldn't let that in. I didn't even want to have the word colitis or inflammatory bowel disease. I wanted to approach it in my own way. You know, I wanted to own it. Now, this was maybe you could say it's a slightly reckless response in some ways, depending on what you believe in and your perspective. But it was what I needed at the time, because that pathway wasn't good enough for me. I have like a lot of energy and a lot of ambition and a lot of things I want to do in life, and like I could not tolerate that. That was not going to be
that's not going to be your reality.
No, like it just sounded so bad. So I left, and I didn't get the prescription, and I got super obsessed with researching the condition, and super obsessed with researching alternative modes of healing and therapy, and started mostly with nutrition, because that was what I knew at the time. I had a friend who was a vegan and really into nutrition, and he was a little bit of a mentor to me. I also had a friend in Switzerland, and she was a herbalist, and so I reached out to these people, and I started reading more books on nutrition. And at the time, the way that I was seeing illness was that it was something that was caused entirely by environmental pollutants and food. So it's the air, the water, the food, anything that comes into the body and has toxicity within it is what's causing our illness. Now, I don't agree with that anymore. I think that's partial truth, but at the time I thought that was the whole thing. So what that led to was vigorous research into nutrition, particularly in quite alternative and some quite far out approaches. That pretty much spiraled into an obsession. So I got very obsessive with food and nutrition, into this thing of purity, and it turns into a bit of a mental health problem if you're not careful, which it did for me. I would have, under the definition of an eating disorder, I would have been classed as having an eating disorder.
Wow.
There was a point where I was eating like 15 bananas a day and not really anything else.
Oh wow.
I was like, bananas are the only food. Everything else is just not right, you know. I was mental. I was taking like bags of bananas with me everywhere.
So you'd read somewhere or heard something about bananas being particularly good for this condition.
Yeah, I found this crazy book on healing colitis and Crohn's, which you can probably still buy off Amazon, but I think is a dangerous book, maybe. Some really interesting stuff in there, but if you're not in a strong, stable, grounded place, it could be dangerous. It was for me. but this stuff all happens in the way that it has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You had to eat bananas at one point for some reason.
Yeah. The other thing with eating disorders is they're a brilliant distraction from other bigger problems in your life. You'll be convinced that the eating disorder is the real problem. Or in fact, when you have the eating disorder, you won't know that you have the eating disorder. You'll be convinced that there's no problems. People around you will think you've got an eating disorder, and on an even deeper level, the eating disorder is just a distraction from something even more painful under the surface, which is, you know, a whole other thing we'll maybe touch on. But eventually, I think I was on tour with my band in Switzerland, and I was talking to this herbalist girl who was just lovely, and she was eating all kinds of different foods, and she was really healthy. And she drank coffee, and she would drink beer when she was at a concert, and she even had a little bit of meat. And I thought, she seems really happy and healthy, and she's not only eating bananas. Maybe the banana thing is not the answer. And then around that same time, that was also just really good for me at the time. I was probably a bit depressed and didn't realize it. Going on tour and being in a different place every day, brilliant, really helped. And also my family and closest friends started to become vocally concerned about me, and that was like, oh wow, that's never happened before. People around me are worried about me, because I've always had that thing of, oh, I'm strong, I can do it. I can do it on my own, I don't need help, you know, that kind of disease that a lot of us have adopted. And so then a lot of other things in my life at that time sort of collapsed all at once, including a long-term relationship, my job, a dream of creating a music facility in the town that was kind of just starting to get legs, but then collapsed. My mental health, my physical health, everything went to shit in a very short amount of time. And in particular, on one weekend, I found out that I had some debt that I didn't know about to Universal Credit. My relationship ended, my band ended. I lost my best friend because he was the guy that went with my girlfriend.
Oh no.
The studio died. I lost my job. I went to the hospital because I got drunk and fell over and hit my head. And
so it really was. I call that with your vortex of shit. Anything else you want to throw in there? Just bug it on in.
That's where I was in the vortex of shit. And then and all the while the symptoms were still there, and sometimes I would convince myself that they were getting better and the bananas were working, and other times it was impossible to convince myself of that because they seemed to be getting worse. Now, after the vortex of shit, when all that happens, it kind of collapses your identity as well, or your ego. And when that happens, it's very, very painful, but it's great because it means you have to start to get real. You have to really get your feet on the ground and actually deal with reality, with a slightly more objective reality. You can't live on your early 20s illusions anymore, which had kept you safe until this point. They have to be smashed down. So then it was then that I started getting a bit better. I got into meditation and yoga, and hopefully no one I'm working with is going to see this, but I also experimented a little bit with psychedelics in a therapeutic mode, not recreationally. And if that's bothered anybody that's listening, just do a little bit of research into therapeutic medical use of psilocybin.
But did you actually have somebody guiding you through that process then?
No, I did it myself. So I found out exactly what they would do in that guiding process, and I created my own I wrote kind of like a list and created an inner guide, if you like, that would stay there for the session internally and help guide me through the experience. Now, it was in one of those experiences that, and this happens fully internally, just lying on the floor in a quiet room. It was in one of those experiences that I realized that the mind, that it doesn't all go on up here. that your whole body is a mind, and that all of your organs are minds, and that you have a relationship with all of the parts of your body, and that it's all interconnected. And I could feel and experience that under those circumstances, which was very powerful for me, because it made me realize that my relationship with my intestines was a very, very negative one. It was one loaded with fear and shame and frustration. Because if you imagine a dog or a child, and the only way that you ever communicate with it is you're basically unhappy with it, because it's not being what you want it to be. It's not behaving in the way that you'd like it to. And you create that negative reinforcement then, because every time it does something that you don't like, you send basically negative thoughts and feelings its way and tell it that it's wrong and it's not okay. So then in comes like a huge wave of love. And it's like, oh, this part of my body needs to be loved. It needs to know that it is being recognized, that it's doing its best, and it's okay to not be well right now. And you know, I'm kind of making it sound like external, like here's me, Ben, and here's my intestines, but that they are also me. So it was a very powerful experience of self-love, and probably the first time that it crystallized what that term actually means, because it can be a bit of a wishy-washy term. But with an experience like that, it was very clear what it meant. It meant to accept yourself for whatever you are in this moment. And when I did that, I also started omming, like and I could feel with my hands on my tummy and making that sound, that I could find a sound that kind of like tickled that area of my body and made it feel like it was helping send the message of love, like send the feeling. And the whole area was kind of lighting up and glowing and feeling really warm and really beautiful. And it was a very powerful, very loving experience. And so that was also my first experience with sound healing, sound therapy, because the vibrations that I could make had a role in transmitting the energy or the message or whatever you want to call it. And it was very, very distinct for me in that moment. So that was a really powerful experience, because it wasn't just an experience in and of itself. It had some very important messages for me to take away with afterwards. So then I was doing a lot of journaling and then a lot of researching about this mind-body connection stuff, and somatic awareness, and the how the unconscious mind, the body kind of plays a role of the unconscious mind, and feelings that we don't, that we suppress or that we repress, can live in the body, maybe stored in certain areas of the body or in the energetic field around the body, and cause health problems if there's a lot of stuck energy in one area. So I started looking into Chinese medicine and mystical things and all kinds of interesting esoteric ideas, as well as also a lot of modern science, because it turns out there was a lot of modern science in the past couple of decades that were all talking about this kind of stuff. And when I started reading that, I was like, oh wow, that's what I came across when I was tripping, this is real, like I know what they're talking about. So then really started getting into all of that, and at the same time my diet really stabilized. I started eating porridge every day, and more starchy things and vegetables, and I started to find more intuitively what I wanted, what my body needed for food. So instead of like waiting for the intellectual mind to read something on the internet or in a book and then go, okay, I need bananas, I was learning to listen to what my body was asking for, which was things like broccoli, sweet potatoes, steamed courgettes, oats, a little bit of fruit too, and not really any meat at the time. I think I might have been a vegan at the time, I can't remember. And so that was cool. And then this whole thing of like intuition, which again, to me had always been this kind of wishy-washy word, that started coming through, because I had opened to the idea that there's not just this intellectual mind. You know, I've been a student in university and quite into reading and, in a sense, intellectual debate, and being one of those like arrogant youngsters that thinks he's smart and stuff. And so I was very of this area of the mind. And it was very interesting to get into realizing that there's other intelligences that you could say are centered in different parts of the body. The heart mind and the gut mind being the two most kind of notable ones. So that was very interesting, because that changed the whole way that I saw life, that you have these powerful inner voices, the messages from the heart or gut instincts that are really powerful guides that, you know, I never would have thought of that before then. I just thought it all goes on here and in books and what people tell you and in hard truths of science and reality and stuff, you know. So then this whole period turned into more of a kind of spiritual thing. And I started to experience more and more like almost religious type experiences, spiritual experiences. I was doing a lot of meditating, and I started doing yoga every morning, which was another part of my kind of intention for self-care. I've got to make it like a commitment that every day I'm doing something which is about my own wellness, because I can't live in this kind of, you know, disease state. So I had some really it's quite hard to explain these experiences, because they're things that aren't really of the everyday, and that they're not that easy to come up with words for. But say a few months after that time, some things started to really change in my mind. I'd finished reading Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which is a very, very beautiful book. And around the time I finished it, I had a trip to Iceland. And in Iceland, I won't tell the story because it will take too long, but a bunch of really peculiar synchronous things happened in Iceland. And then I came home, and when I was home, it was like some deep sense of peace had unfolded upon me. And it was like nothing is wrong at all, ever, anywhere. And everything is God. And I wasn't the kind of person that would like using that word God. But I would be walking down the street with my brother's dog. They were on holiday during this time. And I would look at him, and he would be God, and the street was God, and the people that I passed were God. And it was just so beautiful. It was the greatest week of my life. It was just perfect peace. And every person that I spoke to, I could see so much more depth of who they were. And I realized that there was just no such thing as a bad person on this planet. And I don't mean that in a kind of airy-fairy bullshit way. I mean that the bad things that they do are not because they're bad people, it's because they've been hurt. And when people get hurt, they tend to not know what to do with it, and they pass that pain forward. It comes out in unpleasant ways. And that was a very powerful thing to realize, that nobody was inherently bad. It's not to say there's not badness and there's not evil, but it's not what people are at their
No, it's not a person as such. It's just people's behaviors, I guess, in certain.
Exactly. And for me to get to see that when looking deeply in their eyes was an unforgettable lesson, because it teaches you that you're safer in the world than you thought you were, because you know that if you can connect with the person in front of you, they're not going to want to hurt you. And this week was a very, very special week for me, and it eventually came to an end, which was hard to accept. Actually, it was quite sad to lose that. And all it was a state of mind. It was a state of inner peace that I don't know where it came from or why it happened. But when I was there, or actually not when I was there, but afterwards, I had hoped that that's how things would always be now. Because
yes, this you've moved on into this new plateau of consciousness, I guess.
I would have, I would have lived my life in heaven, basically.
Yeah.
That's what it was like. So it was very sad for that to come to an end, and it took me a long time to realize what I was supposed to take from it. And it wasn't until I finished my training in sound healing that that was part of realizing what that was all about. Because if an experience feels somehow incomplete for you, you're still looking for, why did that happen? Like, what was all that about? It doesn't feel resolved, but it does feel resolved now, because I can only really call it like a gift or grace, because I think it made me a better person. And so there's no lack of resolution there. It's like, well, it was a gift, and it doesn't really matter where it came from or why it happened. But I think it made me a better person, because it helped me to see a deeper truth of who people are. And that gave me the capacity to be able to listen to anybody. Now, I can't do that every day, and I can't do that when I'm in certain moods. But if I'm in a stable mood and it's the right time and the right context, I can listen to virtually anything that anybody has to say. And that helped with my studies in sound therapy, because a lot of it was basically like counseling or psychotherapy. And that's only, in my opinion, that is really only possible if the individual doing the counseling understands compassion, and not just like the intention of being sympathetic, but actually an embodied sense of compassion, in that, on the deepest level, that there's a chance this person can be well, and that your level of presence in working with them might aid in that. But you're not going to be attached to the outcome necessarily. You're just going to be here with them, and just hope and have faith, and do your absolute best to maybe help. And you have to have no judgment to be able to do that too. So that was another thing that I was taught from that particular week. So it turned out to all be very relevant gifts. All the while, my conditions just disappeared. The symptoms have just been gradually disappearing.
So were you aware of that? Were you sort of, or
I became like less tense about it all.
Yeah.
I became like less interested in it, less focused on it. The fear of it was dissolving. I became a lot more interested in who I am, and in how to love myself and be myself, and be authentic, and understand what I'm doing here. And so with the letting go of the fear around the issue and the shame around the issue, and seeking to have a more holistic approach to health, which again, I know is almost a corny thing to say now, but experientially what it means is that you're involving your nutrition as well as your mind and your emotions, and you could say spirit or something as well, and relationships most importantly. I think the way that you relate to people is maybe number 1 or 2 in health for me. I'd say emotions and relationships are about the top things when it comes to my health. Food is like 5 or 6 on the chart, kind of
it's
super important.
Well, it's interesting, because I've done some quite crazy experiments with food. Not quite as crazy as just taking bananas, but I have been immensely restrictive to taking things out, and I've sort of come to that realization as well, where obviously what we put into our body is important, and if we just ate burgers and chips every day, then our body's not going to be in super health. So it is weighing up what is good for our bodies, and it changes how you see food. I don't know if that's what you've experienced, but if you have a choice now between a plate of burgers and chips and a plate of some healthy salad with like some beans and lentils and all fun things like that in it, then then I know which one I would pick now, whereas once upon a time I probably wouldn't have done.
For me now, I would have the salad and the lentils, but if I've got space, I would start having the burger afterwards.
Would you?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the day,
Yeah, absolutely.
But, so I was going to say something, and I can't remember what it was, but I think it was important. What were we talking about?
We were, sorry, I interrupted you because I talked about food, because you were talking about how the...
Oh, I remember now. I remember. There's kind of two approaches to illness, was what I was starting to see. One was to target the negative thing, like the problem, like say the tumor, for example, if you've got a cancerous tumor, and to get rid of it, so cut it out somehow. And the other approach was to expand your capacity to love yourself entirely. Now, I think like they're both relevant in different contexts, but I had only been doing that first one. It's all about focus on the illness, and that food comes into that a lot. And the thing is with food is it's best if you can to eat with a sense of contentment with life and love for oneself, rather than to eat in a way that's trying to kill an inner disease, because basically you're sending yourself the message that there's something wrong with you all the time, because everything I eat has this intention of there's something wrong with me and this is going to fix me. And it's like, that's not love, and love is what heals is. So that was also a very important realization that I had to deal with, that I have to stop sending myself the message that I'm broken and need fixing. Now it sounds counterintuitive because, well, you've got a disease, like there's something seriously wrong with you. But that's true, like on one level, but that's not the message you want to send to your body and to yourself. You don't want that to become your way of understanding who you are right now, because that's a really damaging message, and it just reinforces it. So that's kind of like a significant thing to try and work with, and I had to do that again when I then dealt with the chronic pain issue a few years later.
So was that then just to, because this is something you're definitely talking the same language that that I talk, I've written down love is what heals us, which is amazing, and the messages
I figured we'd be on the same page with that.
Yeah. So you talk about the messages that you were sending to yourself. So how did you become aware of that? Was that just being aware of your self-talk? Was there a process that you went through for?
Yeah, it's like this this inner voice that you keep quiet. When you beat yourself up in your mind, it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me, and oh, I hate that about myself, and oh, that's shit, isn't it? And that seems to be getting worse, and I'm worried about that. And all of that is not very nice. Imagine if you splurged all that onto your best friend, like the only stuff you ever said to them was really negative, fearful stuff. They wouldn't be a very good relationship between the two of you. Do you know what I mean? And so I wanted to treat my inner world as if there was a family within, that there was a lot of different parts of me. And being a musician helped a lot with that, because every new music project I started had a different kind of character to it. So I started to realize that there's a lot of Bens. There's the version of Ben that people see, but there's a lot of different inner voices, and they all needed time to come through, to be acknowledged, brought out of the shadow, if you like. Now, did that answer your question? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, yes, it was really how to bring awareness to those inner voices, I suppose, and I think it's exactly that. And I think sometimes writing it down, I remember doing an exercise years ago where you just wrote down, what is coming up. So if you wrote something that you want, a goal that you want to achieve, or complete health, for example, and then write down what starts coming up in you. Well, that's never going to happen to you, is it? You can't even walk. Whatever comes up, and just keep talking, and then change it. So read it back, but don't read it as if you're saying it to yourself. Read it as if you're saying it to somebody else.
That's great. Yeah.
And then it's like, ew. Yes, and
I did a lot of that.
You can't even say it. If you imagine saying it to your child, for example, like you said, or your best friend, or your something like that, you probably couldn't even say it.
Well, we have a huge fear of success. It seems to be part of the human condition. It's one of the scariest things to actually be a success, and I mean a success on your own terms. I don't mean like rich and famous with a massive career. Being successful is really scary because it involves a massive sense of responsibility in the way that you operate. And I could really easily apply that to when I was trying to make this music facility, this studio in the town. My condition was a great excuse for being able to end that, because I was terrified of that. I was really scared of having that level of responsibility, even though on another level it was exactly what I wanted. It was really scary, and the failure and the success were both equally scary. So it sounds a little odd, but the condition had a payoff, and illnesses, diseases often do. That's often what perpetuates them, is that they provide us with something, just like an addiction does. Like when I had a chronic pain issue, eventually it was like, look, I can't do any more. I'm overloaded. I can barely move. I can't get out of bed. So it had a payoff, and as long as the payoff is working, it's kind of unlikely that we're going to get much better, because if you don't want to let go of that payoff, then you're going to hold on to the condition. Now, this kind of language is kind of controversial because it would suggest that we're entirely responsible for our own illnesses. And now I think you could argue that if you're entirely aware of what's going on. Now, mostly we're not entirely aware of what's going on, so you can't be fully responsible for your illness, but you can intend to be. You can be on a journey towards that. But there's always so many things going on in the unconscious, and in the shadow, and then also in higher minds as well, that we're just not really aware of, and we don't yet get why this is a gift, or why it's a necessary challenge for us, and we don't see the full thing yet, because we're just in this like smaller part of it. So because of that, it means that it takes a long time, and it's really, really hard, as you'll know, and anybody that's dealt with any kind of pain or fatigue or any kind of illness or disease, is really, really horrible. And I extend my heart to anybody living with disease and illness, because it makes life really hard to enjoy. It saps the joy from life, and it's just awful. Like, it was so bad being in pain, and thinking that you just sort of fucked up beyond repair, and it's a really, really tough place to be, and you can lose hope in a place like that, which is, I think, a lot of the reason why these kind of journeys sometimes lead to spirituality, because you have to become connected with faith, with something.
Yes.
Even if it's just in yourself, or in the common good, or in family, or whatever. We all have to.
But I think once you start opening yourself up to that, a bit like what you did, you experience things that you see things differently. It is shifting that perspective, because if we can shift our perspective a little bit, what was always there, we just see, quite often it's just a shift, isn't it? So even just seeing it out of your window, sometimes you can't see what somebody sitting next to you can see, because
exactly, and that's why all this stuff is great. Like before I came on, I wrote down a list of everything that I tried, and I'll read it out really quickly. So I tried EFT, emotional freedom technique, Reiki, sound healing, various forms of meditation, food experimentation, no food, herbs, different types of thinking, the Wim Hof method, running, coaching other people, yoga, psychedelics, Tai Chi, Qigong, sleeping more, sleeping less, helping people, not helping people, the Sedona method, NLP methods, self-inquiry, journaling, fasting, painting, art therapy, nature time, music therapy, Joe Dispenz's manifestation techniques, the Heart Math Institute's techniques, trauma release shaking, and there's loads more too. I was just trying everything, and not like even just as a tourist, but really going into those things and giving them a good go. And all of that stuff was good. All of it was. None of it was the answer. which you tend to think each one is.
Yeah, you're waiting for the. I don't know. That's probably something which is holding me back, really, with my own healing. It's a little bit of come on, this is got to be the thing.
Yeah,
the one thing that changes everything.
Yeah, and medication could be that too, a new medication. And I think all of those things are good, and they all help a little, and they all propel your sense of hope and sense of engagement in your condition and your own improvement. But they are all also a projection or externalization of the way, which is an inner voice. Only exists within you. The way, the answer, and so in a way they can all become a kind of an addiction or a distraction. And I was definitely guilty of that at various points. Maybe guilty is not the right word.
No, we don't want to be guilty.
But it was great, because in all of those things, just as you were saying before, it expanded my perspective a little bit more and a little bit more each time. And I learned to feel energy, for example, which was something I thought was a load of bollocks before, but have since had enough profound experiences to know that there's absolutely something to that. I learned to, regulate my emotions and breathing and things like that, and deal with like physical stresses from cold water, like with the Wim Hof technique, recognizing the necessity for exercise, but also appropriate exercise, like exercise that you love, not exercise that you think you have to do. Like I can't go to the gym. I find it so boring and so painful. But what I found once I recovered from the chronic pain issue, I found climbing. Now climbing is just brilliant because my body seems to be made for it. I can do it quite naturally. Whereas all the other sports and exercises I've done in my life, I just couldn't stand them. Trying out all of this different stuff was essentially like an experimentation to find who I am and what I really want and what works for me. So it's all just about getting closer to me at the end of the day, not in a self-centered way exactly, but although no, self-centered isn't even a negative word, isn't it?
Well, no, this is it, because actually you are the center of your universe, aren't you? Because everything, you think of every single individual person, we're all the center of our own universe. Absolutely. And I think you're right with the getting to know yourself, because let's face it, we're not really taught how to do that on our educational pathway, or even on our religious pathway. It's not about looking inwards and finding what do you like, what do you want to do, how do you want to spend your days. None of that's important. You need to go to a classroom and sit with 30 other children and do what we tell you to do, and otherwise you'll be punished. And
it's just like prison, isn't it? School.
I
didn't like it.
there's lots of room for improvement, I think, but that's a whole other
questions that you just asked were all on the subject of freedom and personal liberation. What do you want to do today? How would you like to spend your time? What's gonna tick your boxes? And you're right, you don't ever get asked that kind of thing. Yeah. So you have to learn to ask yourself when you're an adult, which is apparently really hard to do.
Well, it is. I mean, I was when my vortex of shit was going on, I was 46. And when, people had asked me that question before, and I'd completely shut down. I don't know, what I want to do. I have no idea. And it took some real forcing to get through the barriers that I'd put up myself to actually discover, actually there's quite a lot that I do want to do. And there was a hidden ambition which was just covered up by lots of stuff.
This is it. It's hard, isn't it? And we get taught that we're selfish and that we're guilty.
And that's bad.
That was actually another reason why I found getting into climbing very liberating, because it's about the most selfish activity I've ever done in my life. There's nothing in it for anybody except me. And there's not really much other stuff that goes on in my life that's so non-relational. And also it could even be dangerous. So let's say if I get hurt or die, that's really going to stress the people that I'm connected to. So it's it's even beyond selfish in that respect. But for me, that was very liberating to get to do something that was finally
just for you.
Just for me. Playing the guitar kind of is too, but it still tends to lead towards concerts or or jam sessions or whatever.
Yeah.
So it involves other people eventually, and it can even be an act of service. If you've made a special song and you share it with a group of people and it means something to them, then that's kind of an act of service. So, but there's no way that climbing is a sense of service to anybody. It really isn't. But I like it, so I'm doing it.
Excellent. Yeah.
That was always a bit of a hard thing for me too, I guess. Being very other person.
Yes, surface driven, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. And so it was a lot easier to focus on other people than yourself, and trying to help other people get better or liberate them or whatever. But you've still got plenty of your own crap to sort out. And I still do. I'm still on my journey. I'm 20.
Well, it's a never-ending journey. I don't think it ends, does it?
Yeah. I used to think that it did, which was like another little sort of spiritual pitfall. It's like, oh yeah, by the time I'm 30, I'll probably be like almost enlightened.
Yeah.
40, it'll be like full enlightenment.
Totally enlightened. Yeah.
It's just nonsense,
Whatever that is like to be fully enlightened. And what you do with that, it's like, oh, now I'm here. Now what? Now what happened?
I think the Buddha said, no, I can't remember who it was. I used to be able to quote this stuff a bit better, but that it's an accident, that when it happens, it only happens by grace. So no matter how well you grow and meditate or whatever, although no, what is it? It's an accident, but meditation makes you accident prone. I think that was
that's quite nice. And it's interesting because when you were talking that, and just what was coming up for me is that, like, yes, I've been forcing it. I've been practicing like crazy in order to get to somewhere, instead of just practicing it because it makes me feel good in the moment. So I think that's a lesson I'm certainly going to take from this conversation. So thank you.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm a very emotional person, so for me, things always come back to emotions. If I can't enjoy life, or my mood isn't good, it's usually always an emotional thing for me. Now that's not the same for everybody. We all do have emotions, but we have different kinds of relationships with them, and they show up in different ways. And some people, maybe artists in particular, tend to be very emotional. And that's part of what makes them able to be artists, but it also makes you a bit turbulent. And I never have been like a flat line kind of person at all. It's always been the roller coaster. A lot of I guess just learning to navigate that stuff and educate myself in that way was always the kind of crux of getting better. And the chronic pain thing was also the same. It was very much tied up with emotions and beliefs as well, actually, which is just bizarre because it doesn't seem to make sense. Like, your body can hurt so much, and it's like, what? So this is an emotion. Like, it takes a really long time to be able to believe that, and nobody around you believes it either. So it just kind of starts to sound like nonsense. We probably won't have time to tell that whole story, so
you'll have to come back on again, because it's fascinating.
That's another long story, the chronic pain one.
Because I think a lot of our listeners are probably dealing with pain on some level, and it's interesting that you didn't have that in your first in the colitis. You said you didn't have any pain in that one.
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a few health issues. I've had stomach problems and a hernia, and I always seem to have something in my early 20s in particular. I was free from colitis for probably 2 years before the chronic pain thing started happening. Classic thing where it seems like it was an injury, and then it starts to seem like, wait a minute, this couldn't have been in it just from an injury. It doesn't.
You don't remember having the injury? You don't remember being injured?
Well, I do. It was a running thing. I thought I had, damaged something on a run. But the kind of the big, so after a few months of being in pain, it just seemed weird. Like, I didn't understand why it wasn't getting better, and I tried lots of different normal things. And then one day, the pain changed from my left buttock and left leg to my right buttock and right leg. it just changed over like overnight. And I woke up and I was like, what? What kind of physical injury is this? You know, it didn't make any sense. And but it's the same story. The osteopath said he had some explanation, but it didn't make sense to me. So again, I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'll try something else, you know. Yeah, and then that was another very difficult, long journey of well, it felt long anyway. Anything which involves pain feels like forever. But yeah, I'm 29 now. I'm going to be 30 this year, and I you know, I know 30 isn't old, but I have noticed like I'll be saying goodbye to my 20s, which comes with a natural sense of grief, I guess.
Yeah.
And but having said that, it's really nice to be approaching 30, and for the first time I don't have any health problems. It's like, yay, I'm getting older and I have less health problems.
And actually you're healthier than you've ever been.
Yeah. And stronger. I can climb now. I didn't used to be able to do that, you know. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's still, life is a fucking nightmare on some days, but like mostly things are all going all right, I guess. Well,
yeah, that's it. And I think so going back to the idea that illness is a gift, so what would, if we could sort of put that into a sentence, what would you say?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's funny because when I first heard you mention that as your ethos, I wasn't sure about it because oh God, but illness is so horrible. Like it's so painful.
Never said it was wanted. Never said it was wanted. Good. Yeah.
Please can I have it? Yeah. But as we've been talking, like it's obvious that it was a gift, you know. Like being at a point now, more like reflection. I know that I'm sure I'll have other health problems in my life. That's just, it is part of life. But yeah, it's most definitely a gift because it forces you to take on challenges in life and to become more intimately connected with life and yourself. And suffering is just one of the best catalysts for growth. That's a hard truth, but I'm certain that is true. So yeah, I think I agree with you, Gina. That diseases or illness or whatever is
it's a gift, and I think it is. Like I said, it's definitely not a wanted one, and sometimes it feels a very unpleasant one.
Yeah.
But if you allow yourself, I guess, that way of unwrapping it, just like you've described, that opening up to different ways of seeing things, different ways of being, allowing yourself to know yourself, and to allow yourself to be selfish and to do things that literally just please you and don't have any, as far as you're aware, any knock on to anybody else at all, which is really incredible.
Did you ever try that thing where you go, why did I choose to have this disease? You know, you kind of pretend that you're suddenly tapped into your unconscious mind and you're
but I might.
It's kind of fun. Yeah. It's interesting what you come out with. Why did I choose to have this chronic pain? Like, why have I given this to myself? You know, it's a little experiment with personal responsibility. Let's see if there's a part of me that's choosing this, basically, and you might get a little signal or a little hint to some little bit of information about what this is doing for you, and about how it's trying to get you to grow. You know. It is trying to give you something. It is trying to tell you something. These diseases aren't stupid, you know. They know. Yeah,
definitely. That's totally what I believe, and I do believe the more I've sort of read into spirituality and what it means and what I'm choosing to believe, because of course our beliefs are whatever we want them to be. So if we believe that actually the world is a beautiful place and God is in everything, then that's exactly what we see. If we believe it's a horrible place and the devil's in everything, then that's exactly what we see.
Yeah, and so you have to be willing to face the inner devil and the inner demons that you're projecting onto your reality, And that's often some of the most painful stuff, you know, confronting those shadow aspects, the things that you least want to believe are a part of who you are, the most awful aspects of yourself. You know, those.
And you've got to love that. You've got to love them bits as well.
Yeah. I agree with that. You have to accept them. You have to accept that that's part of being human.
Yeah.
That you are disgusting. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a couple more minutes. So what would you like to, tell us a bit about your sounds healing then. So what?
All right, sure. Yeah, well, hopefully this can just kind of like sow a seed. So I completed my training for one-to-one therapy, sound therapy with the Sound Healing Academy earlier this year. I'm in the middle of completing my training for working with groups. So I have to do a certain amount of sound baths over the following months. Then hopefully I'll be setting up just a small practice. You know, I'm not going to be doing it too much. I think one day a week would be really nice. You know, I don't want to overwhelm myself with that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Just a little.
Yeah.
But I really value it. It had a big role in me getting better. It's a very special and sacred thing that's thousands of years old and is completely integral to life, because we all listen to music and we all have voices. Everybody is a sound healer, essentially. We're not doing bad work on each other right now, Gina. You know, I'm making sounds, you're making sounds, we both feel good.
Yeah, that's it. They're nice sounds, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Got a good vibration going on.
Yeah, good vibrations. Yeah. So we've all heard a song that's made us cry, that's brought us to tears, and we've all heard music that's been invigorating or made us want to dance or get kind of crazy. So this is just the way that vibrations affect us in all kinds of different ways. And sound healing works with them in a more directly therapeutic way, and works with the physical body, the mind, and the energy body around the physical body, and in a much more direct and kind of simple way. So you're finding blockages in the person. That's one approach anyway, and working with the blockages, using vibrations to essentially move them, just like you would in Tai Chi or Qigong as well, or even in Reiki, I think also it's maybe similar. And also a lot of it is just about relaxing people very deeply so that their body can get into a natural state of healing and self-regulation. Now, sometimes it can't do that because there's blockages there. Let's say the person has a belief that they're not worthy of healing. That would need to be addressed before they were able to be in a deep state of relaxation that could allow them to heal, because the belief is very powerful, and in the energy body it manifests as denser energy, so you can hear it when you use the sounds, and some people could feel it with their hands as well if they were particularly sensitive. So if you play a pure toned bowl around somebody's body, you can hear the way that the sound changes in different places. So with a kind of curiosity about why that might be, that can sometimes help you address what might be going on for that person. Now, for me in particular, I've often found a lot of tension around my stomach and gut area. And so I found sound healing really, really helpful for unlocking that and moving that. For me, it tends to usually lead to a release, and I have a little cry, which I mean, that's probably for me the number one healing thing that we have is our tears.
Cry.
Yeah. I know it's not a very masculine thing to say.
No. And and it's very easy to hold back tears, because a lot of us were probably told when we were children, stop being so silly, don't cry, don't make a fuss. Yeah,
totally. One of the worst messages we can ever receive. Just crack on and don't feel the sadness. I would probably say crying was the number one thing that helped me heal from chronic pain. Wow. I'll probably put that as number one, in terms of an actual mode of releasing the tension, releasing the stuck energy. It would always get 50% better at least after a good cry. Now it's not just random crying. It's not just like just break down and be a mess and crying all the time. But it would be related to real things. and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff from childhood. We've got
Allow yourself to feel it.
yeah, and we've got to purge all this accumulated garbage from life, where our needs weren't met, and we experienced all this developmental trauma. And our parents, no matter how wonderful of people they were, it's inevitable that everybody experiences developmental trauma where our needs weren't met, and we have experiences where we have to repress our emotions and choose to attach to our parent instead of being authentic, because the authenticity leads to, from the child's perspective, a damage to the attachment. Yeah, exactly. So there's just a whole bucket load of accumulated repressed emotion from childhood and teenage years, and there's a lot to get out.
Yeah,
I'm not saying crying is the only way to do it, but it happens.
it's a good one, and we can all do it.
And we can all do it. Yeah. Some people find it very difficult to do, but usually once you find a way to open the
floodgates, they can
then if you can keep that channel open, then you'll be all right. You got to remember, it's important the company that you keep as well, because some friends will be absolutely accepting of you feeling whatever you need to feel and having a cry, and other people
feel very uncomfortable.
Difficult to see, uncomfortable. Maybe they could even be judgmental about it, and it will be harder for you to heal around people like that. Now, those people are probably only like that because they have the same thing, that they maybe struggle to cry or whatever. But it's important the company we keep. You want to choose to be around people that want the best for you and can tolerate
and are open. I think it's just, because we've got enough of our beliefs that we carry with us, and you've just described how powerful they can be. And who we surround ourselves with and what they believe, and what our doctors believe as well is very important. If we go to a doctor and the doctor's in a white coat and they tell us they've got this thing and then give you this prognosis of this is how it's going to pan out. I mean, it takes a pretty strong character, to be fair, to go from the beginning and saying, no, I don't think so, Mr. Doctor, I'm going to go and look elsewhere.
Because it's a tricky one, that. And I mean, my mum worked for the NHS for her whole career, so I generally had a really positive perception of I suppose the medical model. Also, when I had a hernia, they did just a brilliant job, with the diagnosis and the surgery and everything. And I've never had another problem with that since. They did it perfectly. So I was very grateful for that. But when it came to the things that it was obvious they didn't really understand exactly what was causing it, that was where it was like, they don't.
Well, I think the autoimmune collection of conditions, nobody has a clue what causes them, what triggers them, why do some people have them, why do some people don't, why some people have this symptom and that symptom. And
it's interesting, autoimmune, because what it means, isn't it, that the body is in some way attacking itself, right? And isn't that just a fascinating image? Like, it tells me that you're not in the same place, you're not on your own team, you're not in alignment. There's a part of you that is in conflict with another part of you. Now, I know not everybody would maybe believe those kind of parallels between the mind and the physical body. I happen to think there's something to them.
That's definitely what's been coming through for me recently, just over this last weekend, really, that whole alignment piece. That if you're doing things or thinking things or eating things or whatever that you're not in 100% alignment with, and that takes a bit of digging to find out as well. There'd be some little, you might go to a party, but there's some little part of you that doesn't really want it. So it's about bringing up what is it that doesn't really want to, and allow that bit to actually have a voice. And
that I think that's really good advice. Like giving it that. It's space and digging, like you say, like the self-inquiry. And the space thing is so important. Like, that's one of the most important things of this whole thing, I would say. And it's also one of the hardest things to grant ourselves. Like, I'm going to take 20 minutes now to try to inquire within in a more sort of sensitive and genuinely, compassionately curious way. we're really, really bad at that. We've had no training for it whatsoever. We you know, there's kind of a fad of meditation and mindfulness, and I think that's basically good. But this thing of trying to get more sensitive, that's why I mentioned psychedelics, because that was a really big part of me being able to do that. I was basically given a skill in some of those experiences. Now, I'm not sure if I otherwise would have developed a skill in quite the same way. Yeah, they have a thing of speed, I think. Psychedelics.
Yeah.
You can skip out a few years of practice of self-inquiry and jump straight to, you know.
Yeah, so just so you know, we're not advocating taking prescribed medication in any way, shape or form, and just because it happened well for Ben doesn't mean to say it could happen well for anybody.
Yeah, they're still illegal. They will ruin reputations. They can lead to psychosis as well, and I've seen that in somebody, well, a couple of people who are very, very close to me actually, and it's about as bad as things get, full-blown psychosis. So they're definitely not something
nothing to be trifled with, really.
I only mentioned it because it was part of my journey, and it would feel wrong not to acknowledge it, because I'd be profound something that was definitely important.
Thank you for sharing.
I don't mind like contributing to that slight change in, because there is a force at the moment trying to change perspective on psychedelics. Well,
this is it. It's actually, out of all our medication, it's a natural one.
Yeah. Either what I had was very natural, and native to England. So to me, it seemed like something that was quite important, and I'm happy to see. I'm happy to see that there is a lot more research in that area and therapeutic studies going on. It is naturally going to bring some issues too. There'll be resistance to it, and there'll also be people using it recreationally, which will probably bring about some problems. Bound to happen. People make a lot of stupid decisions and mistakes. But I think the countries that have legalized it, there may have been some success, but I don't really know. I'm not really that clued in on it, to be honest with you.
So do your own research and follow your own path. Yeah, absolutely. And you did say, Ben, because I like to end with a little meditation or a bit of a mindful exercise that has been helpful for you. So if you're happy to share one, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'd be. It would be an honor. So what I'll take us through is. This is a meditation that was developed by the Institute of Heart Math. Have you heard of that place?
Yeah.
It's super cool. Facility. I can't remember. It might be California, but I can't remember.
Somewhere in America.
Yeah, dedicated to research around the human heart. And what they discovered was that there's 20,000 what's called sensory neurites within the heart. And sensory neurites are apparently very similar to neurons in the brain. So it started to basically look like the heart is, in a way, another kind of mind, another kind of brain. And it talks with the brain all day, and sends messages and receives messages and so on. So it's really quite a real thing that we have, a voice of the heart or a guidance from the heart. Now, they noticed that the Tibetan monks used, I think there were 4 different words to access a connection with the heart and create what they're now calling heart-brain coherence. Which is some kind of state of physiological connection between the brain and heart, where they're coherently talking and they're not in a sense of dissonance. And the 4 words that they used were compassion, care, gratitude, and appreciation. So those 4 words are kind of like keys. So they'll come up in this brief meditation. So there's 3 parts to the meditation. 1 is to slow the breathing down. The 2nd is to make a connection with the heart, which we can do with physical touch. And the 3rd is to invoke these words, these keys, to help us access a sense of feeling within the heart. And it's been found through their studies that this very short meditation can affect your mood and your physiology for hours or days afterwards, just for doing it for a few minutes. So sounds worth a go, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
So for anybody that's watching, if you would like to gently close your eyes and just start slowing your breathing down. Maybe to around 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Or if you have your own method or approach, then feel free to do that. But all we're doing here is using the lungs, the breathing, to entrain other systems of the body to slow down. What that's going to do, sends a message, signal that we're safe and that we can relax. When we're relaxed and safe, it's easier for the body to naturally heal and for us to be able to access deeper parts of our being. Now, maintaining that nice slow breath, you can now place one hand or two hands or any number of fingers over the heart. And focus on the sensations between your hand and your heart. Just with a simple intention of connecting to your heart. Making sure the breathing is nice and slow but not forced. It's nice and relaxed. And noticing the sensations between your hand and your heart. We've slowed things down. We've started making a connection. Next, we can bring about those words given to us by the expert meditators in Tibet. Words that are keys to connecting to our hearts. Those words are compassion, gratitude, care, and appreciation. So you can think of any one or any combination of those words and make a sincere attempt to feel them within your heart. To feel compassion for anyone or anything. To feel gratitude towards anyone or anything. To feel care towards anyone or anything. Or to feel appreciation towards anyone or anything. when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and bring yourself back to the present moment.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the dog having a little shake, but I was feeling my appreciation. The dog came out, and yeah, so well, thank you so much. We've had a great conversation, and thank you for ending on such a lovely space. Yeah, it was feel good. So if anybody wants to know more about you, Ben, is there a way of getting in touch, or don't you want to know people? What's your
I think I'll leave it, and if they really want to get in touch with me, they'll find a way.
Excellent. We'll go with that. Well, thank you so much.
Hopefully they'll see when I start advertising as doing the sound therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps when I've done that, I'll let you know as well, Gina.
I can share it out, absolutely. Well, maybe once you've done that, we can have another conversation, and we can do a bit of shouting about it if you want to get promoting and talk, because there's lots to cover in an hour, and I think we've gone over the hour, so I didn't do my timers very well. But
I would just I'd really like to thank you for the work that you're doing, because firstly, it's just been on a personal level really enjoyable to be able to talk about my story like that. I don't think I've ever done it in that way before, and had been granted that much space and time and focus from another person. So that felt really special to me, so thank you. And also you're contributing to trying to make life better for people that are having a hard time, and that's a very special reason to be here on planet Earth. So yeah, thanks for doing what you do. I think that's very, very special.
My pleasure, and thanks again for joining us and sharing your story, because it's been fascinating. So thank you.
Right on.